My boss used the holiday party to humiliate me, so I made sure he never forgot that night. That sentence has been burned into my memory because it's exactly how it started. Imagine working yourself to the bone all year. Late nights, early mornings, skipped weekends, just to keep the company afloat during its toughest season. And then, when the one night of celebration finally arrives, the one night meant to recognize everyone's hard work, your boss decides to turn you into the evening's entertainment, not by praising you, not by thanking you, but by mocking you. That night, under twinkling lights, champagne glasses clinking, and forced holiday cheer, my boss, Mr. Whitaker, decided to make me the punchline of his cruel jokes. He thought humiliating me in front of the entire office was funny. But as everyone laughed nervously at my expense, I sat there with my blood boiling. And that's when I promised myself, if he wanted to make a show out of me, I'd make a show out of him. One so unforgettable that he'd regret ever underestimating me. I'm Darius Cole, 32 years old, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I've worked at a mid-sized marketing firm in Manhattan for almost 7 years. My role? Senior account manager. Not the flashiest job, but it's the type of position where, if you're not on top of every little detail, millions of dollars in client contracts can vanish overnight. I wasn't some hotshot exec. I wasn't even the loudest voice in the room, but I was the guy people relied on when projects fell apart. I was the one who picked up the pieces at 10 p.m. when everyone else was already home. And Mr. Whitaker, my boss, he knew that. Oh, he knew it very well. See, Whitaker was the kind of boss who thrived on appearances. Suits so sharp they could cut glass, shoes polished until they reflected the ceiling lights. He loved to present himself as the visionary leader of the company. But in truth, he was nothing more than a parasite who fed off the hard work of people like me. He had this cruel little habit, too, tearing others down in public just to make himself look superior. If a client presentation went wrong, he'd act as if he personally wasn't involved at all and then throw his team under the bus. And the worst part? He'd do it with a smirk, like he was above us. Now I've endured my fair share of difficult managers in the corporate grind. But Whitaker? He was something else. He didn't just want to succeed, he wanted to dominate. He wanted people beneath him to feel small, so his ego felt bigger. And me? I'd put up with it for too long. Maybe because I thought hard work would eventually outshine his nonsense. Maybe because I just needed the paycheck. But deep down, I knew he was rotting this place from the inside out. The company's annual holiday party was supposed to be our one night of relief. A rare moment where stress melted away and we got to breathe without deadlines breathing down our necks. It was always extravagant. Whitaker loved to flaunt the firm's success with rooftop venues, expensive caterers, and open bars. That night, though, instead of feeling like a celebration, it became the stage for my humiliation. And once he made the mistake of making me his target, that party stopped being a party. It became the battlefield where I would get my revenge. The night of the holiday party, the energy was electric, Manhattan's skyline glittering outside, rooftop heaters blasting warmth, champagne flutes clinking everywhere. Everyone was in high spirits. For once, people weren't thinking about deadlines or client calls. But Whitaker, Whitaker wasn't there to relax. He was there to perform. He strutted through the crowd in a velvet blazer, shaking hands with executives, flashing that fake politician smile he always wore. He loved these parties because they gave him a spotlight, an audience. And what better way to feed his ego than to make an example of someone? That someone was me. It started small, a toast. He raised his glass and said something like, "Here's to another successful year, despite a few hiccups along the way." Then he looked right at me, held the silence for just long enough that people started chuckling. The pit of my stomach dropped. Later, when awards were being handed out for Employee of the Year and Most Innovative Team, Whitaker decided to throw in his own category. He clinked his glass, pulled everyone's attention, and announced, "And finally, let's give a hand to the person most likely to live in this office, Darius Cole. Always here, even on weekends." Seriously, does this guy even have a life? The room burst out laughing. My coworkers glanced at me awkwardly, some shaking their heads, others pitying me. My face was on fire. But he wasn't done. As the night went on and the drinks kept flowing, he got bolder. He walked past me at the buffet table, smirked, and said loudly enough for others to hear, "Careful, Darius. Don't pile your plate too high. You've already got enough weight to carry with all those mistakes this year." Another round of chuckles. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. This was supposed to be a night of relaxation, of celebration. Instead, I had become the punchline to his cruel jokes. And the worst part? He enjoyed every second of it. He thrived on watching me squirm in front of my colleagues. I clenched my jaw, forced a smile, and played along. But inside something snapped. That was the moment I knew I couldn't just keep taking it. That was the moment I stopped being his victim and started planning his downfall. I left that party hollowed out, pretending the laughter hadn't cut me to the bone. I smiled and shook hands. I mouthed congratulations to people I'd worked with for years. But inside my head, a single loop played on repeat. He made this my humiliation. He made this my whole night. He chose me. The thing about humiliation is that it has a taste, metallic, hot, and oddly clarifying. It strips away the fog of compromise and shows you the exact line you won't cross again. For me, that line had been crossed in front of an entire office. For me, the line had been crossed using the one thing I prized most, my dignity. I replayed the moment in my mind until a plan began to form. Not a flinch or a petty revenge, but something methodical. If Whitaker wanted spectacle, I'd give him one, but a different kind. One that would expose him in the very arena where he performed best, in front of other people. I didn't have blackmail material or a secret stash of incriminating emails. What I did have was time, observation, and access. I knew the company's rhythms, which accounts mattered, which VP cared about what, who kept silent in meetings, and who documented everything. I knew Whitaker's patterns. He loved the stage, he loved optics, and he had a private life he kept neatly separated from his public persona. He had weaknesses, human, predictable ones. All I needed to do was find them and connect the dots. First thing Monday, I started quietly, not dramatic, no confrontations, no threats. I began with the tiniest of habits. I checked expense reports during lunch, not because I expected to find anything, but because I'd noticed a few odd line items in the past and curiosity had been pricking at me since the party. It's funny how a single, humiliating joke can sharpen your attention to everything the person does. And then I found it. A hotel charge for a weekend 2 months ago, in a city where no client meeting had been scheduled. A dinner charge for a date that didn't match any travel approval. The totals weren't huge, but they were messy, sloppy enough for a man who was otherwise so careful about his image. I saved the receipts, I made copies. I didn't do anything dramatic with them. I simply slid PDFs into a folder on my laptop and labeled it, ironically, Whitaker_review. The label was a joke that made me smile in a way that felt dangerously close to vindication. But curiosity wasn't enough. I needed corroboration. One receipt could be explained away as a personal misclick, a misplaced charge. Patterns, though, patterns don't lie. So I started mapping them, looking for repetitions. Same vendor names, same midweek bookings at odd hours, the same charge descriptor repeated with small variations. Each similarity made my heartbeat quicken. Then came the second discovery that turned a plan into a weapon. Whispers. People talk. Not everyone, but enough. The receptionist mentioned seeing Whitaker leave early one afternoon with a woman who wasn't his wife. A junior account coordinator mentioned that the expense codes for certain dinners always came from a specific card. It was gossip, sure, but gossip with breadcrumb trails. I didn't blurt anything out. I simply collected copies of receipts, casual notes from coworkers who remembered odd details, screenshots of expense approvals that seemed out of sync with travel calendars. I made a timeline. Names, dates, amounts, locations, neat columns in a spreadsheet the way I'd always organized client rollouts. The spreadsheet made it feel less like vengeance and more like work, which really it was. The more I gathered, the more confident I became. This wasn't a personal he said, she said. It was a chain. Pile enough small things together, and a narrative forms on its own. Together, they could expose hypocrisy and misuse of company funds, And when placed on the right stage, during the next party or in front of HR or in the inbox of the CEO, the effect would be devastating. But I also knew the moral line I didn't want to cross. This wasn't about destroying a person's life. It was about holding someone accountable for the way he used his power to demean others and hide his own faults behind a suit. I wanted accountability, not ruin. So I kept refining. I practiced my calm face when colleagues joked about the party. I stayed late offering to tidy up the event records so the finance team could reconcile easier. I looked helpful while I copied files. I smiled while saving receipts into two separate external drives, one encrypted with a password only I knew. Finally, in a meeting where the holiday party was briefly discussed as a success, Whitaker cracked another petty joke. The room chuckled. I felt the old anger rise for a second, then tamped it down. The plan was coming together, the timeline was set. The only thing left was the trigger. When, where, and how I'd reveal it so that everyone who'd laughed with him would now see his truth. That night I sat alone at my kitchen table and opened the spreadsheet. Rows of dates flowed down the page, each one a small injustice recorded as currency. The humiliation didn't feel like fuel anymore. It felt like evidence. The distinction steadied me. I wasn't acting out of spite. I was acting out of a resolve to correct an imbalance. There was one question I had to answer before moving. Public reveal or HR channel? The party had taught me something. People react differently in public. Some will cheer for the spectacle. Some will shrink from confrontation, but Whitaker only understood the spotlight. He performed for it. The idea of pulling back the curtain during a moment he'd planned to use for cruelty had an appeal that was too potent to ignore. So I made a choice. I would expose him where he was strongest. I would use his stage to show the audience the calculus of his deceit. But I would be surgical, fair, and factual. No theatrics that were purely spiteful. Just a clear, undeniable presentation of facts. The plan was risky. If I failed, I'd be the one humiliated again, perhaps worse. If I succeeded, it would not only avenge that night, but change the culture at the firm. That thought steadied me as much as fear did. I went to bed that night with the spreadsheet open on my laptop, and a resolve in my chest that felt heavier and truer than any insult Whitaker had thrown at me. I had receipts, whispers, and a spreadsheet. The only missing element now was the stage. The annual client showcase was scheduled in 3 weeks, a public event where Whitaker would inevitably perform. If the timing was right, the reveal would land where the laughter used to be. But one wrong step, and I'd be the one standing in the spotlight, ruined. The next chapter had to be the execution, planting the evidence where it would be seen, and making sure the AV tech or the right person would play my slide when the time came. I didn't want to wing this. A spontaneous call-out at the party would have been messy, aggressive, and easy to dismiss as revenge theater. If I was going to pull this off, it had to be precise. It had to look like cold, irrefutable truth. So when the moment came, laughter turned to silence and excuses turned to explanation. Step 1 was paperwork. I spent a week buried in expense reports, timestamps, and approval logs. Finance was a maze, but a predictable one. There are always patterns, line items that repeat. Vendors that show up more than they should. Approval chains that skip people who should be involved. I found those patterns and followed them. I started with the small things. The midweek hotel charges, the dinners billed under client entertainment, when no client name was attached. Then came the slightly bolder entries. A boutique hotel stay that corresponded to dates where no client meeting existed. A jewelry store charge listed as miscellaneous. 2 nights at a vineyard billed as team retreat, when the team calendar showed no such retreat. Every time I found something, I downloaded it, copied it, printed it, and put it in a folder. I labeled things clinically. Invoice Whitaker 03 1224.pdf. Because the clinicality mattered. When revenge is wrapped in numbers, it's much harder to call it emotion. Numbers read like fact. Facts are stubborn. Step 2 was corroboration. Receipts alone can be explained away. One sloppy entry could be a mistake. 10 sloppy entries over a year? That starts to smell like a habit. So I reached out quietly to people who might have seen something, receptionists who logged visitors, assistants who booked travel, and a couple of junior team members who often did the expense submissions. I didn't go in with accusations. I asked questions like a researcher, not a prosecutor. Hey, do you remember seeing a charge for a hotel in April? Who usually approves the Whitaker card? Did you ever notice odd vendor names on the entertainment ledger? Small queries, casual, almost idle. People talk, especially when you're not shouting blame at them. A receptionist mentioned a name, Elena, who'd signed Whitaker out of the building one Saturday. An assistant remembered approving off-site without a client listed. Little sparks of corroboration began to light up my spreadsheet. Next, the audio. I'd overheard him on the phone at the party, an idiot move on his part, and that nagging clip in my head kept playing. If receipts established a pattern, his own words would make the narrative visceral. I started to set up natural recording opportunities, not in a creepy or illegal way, just benign things people do every day. Leaving your voice memo app open while you dictate notes, dictating reminders aloud in the office, or wandering into a conference area and airing frustrations into an unmuted speaker. There was a difference between entrapment and serendipity. I relied on the latter. One Friday afternoon, as the team wrapped up and the bar staff were clearing plates from a client lunch, Whitaker sat in his office and took a call. He spoke loudly, unaware how thin the walls had become with the holiday setup. "We'll put it on the company card," he said, laughing. "Don't worry, she'll never know." I didn't record the whole conversation in cinematic fashion. I made a single clear audio clip, enough for the audience to hear the tone, the phrase, and the implication. Not salacious, not salaciously voyeuristic, just one line that matched the numbers on the spreadsheet. The next move was technical. The slideshow. I'm not a designer, but I am a storyteller. People respond to pictures and timelines. I took the receipts, matched them to calendar dates, and created a clean visual sequence. Date, expense, description, approval. Then I added a few simple headers. Company funds, personal charges, and vendor, unknown, and finally, pattern of misuse. Each slide was short, factual, and deliberately unornamented. No sarcasm, no memes, just evidence. Because Whitaker loved theatrics, I decided to mirror his own method. He used presentations to steer the audience's emotions, to control the narrative. So I built a slideshow that would do the opposite, strip the narrative down to its bones. Facts first, context second, consequence last. But having a file wasn't enough. For a party reveal, you need a delivery system. You can't just shout, "Look," and expect everyone to turn. At events like ours, the AV is run by a vendor, and the venue often has an in-house tech who cues slides, cues music, and switches microphones. If the tech played my deck at the right minute, the effect would be instantaneous. If the wrong deck appeared, or if Whitaker's assistant scanned the laptop beforehand, the plan died. So I cultivated an AV assistant. His name was Marco, a kid who ran lights and did freelance sound. He was friendly, didn't ask many questions, and liked a good tip. Half a dozen coffees and a two-line explanation. "I'm doing something for the event wrap-up. Can you cue me if I say the word?" And he was in. I gave him the USB with my file and asked him to keep it in his queue. He promised, with the kind of casual confidence that comes from someone who sees all sorts of weird requests at events. I also prepared an insurance policy. If the AV tech was compromised, I'd need another path. So I coordinated with two other people, the head of marketing, who trusted me, and Leah from HR, who had a quiet sense of justice and once told me she hated public cruelty. I showed them parts of the spreadsheet months earlier. Not the full thing, but enough so they wouldn't be shocked if something came up. They didn't need persuasion. They needed to feel that the reveal would be truthful and measured. And finally, rehearsal. Not a full rehearsal, nothing that would risk detection, but a mental one. I imagined Whitaker's clownish grin when he took the microphone. I imagined the exact cadence I'd use, not accusatory, not theatrical, but calm and factual. It would begin like this. "If we're celebrating transparency tonight, I'd like to share some facts." Pause. Have Marco hit the slide. Let the receipts speak. Let people make the connections themselves. In the weeks leading up to the party, I kept my face smooth in meetings. I joked with Whitaker when he mocked me in passing, and smiled when he told his little stories. It was exhausting sometimes, acting like someone who hadn't been humiliated for weeks. But every time he made a dig, it reinforced how necessary the plan was. Patience, after all, is not just waiting, it's preparing. On the eve of the party, I printed 2 copies of the main evidence packet and left them with Leah and Marco. If anything goes sideways, I said, send these to the CEO. I didn't sound dramatic. I sounded like someone who'd thought things through. They nodded. When I locked my laptop that night and zipped the files onto an encrypted USB, I felt both light and heavy, with the levity of anticipation and the weight of responsibility. This wasn't about revenge for its own sake. It was about exposing a pattern so the people who'd been embarrassed, cut down, and belittled could finally see their tormentor in a new light. Not as a legend, but as a man whose ledger told a very ordinary story of selfishness. The folder sat under the AV text control, and the printed packet rested on Leah's desk. The venue would be full, the lights would be warm, and Whitaker would be ready to perform. All that was left was timing, waiting for the exact moment when the projector would switch from his jokes to the evidence. The reveal had been engineered. Now the real test was the moment of execution. I remember the feeling in my palms as if it were a physical thing, not sweat, but a steady warmth that said, this is happening now. The rooftop was glittering, the band played its last polite set, and the room had that soft electricity holiday parties always do, laughter folded in with too much wine, and the shallow ease of people pretending they're not exhausted. Whitaker loved that ease. He loved to push the room into that soft zone, where people laughed at cruel jokes because it's safer than calling them out. He took the stage in that moment like a man stepping into the glare he'd been born to. Velvet blazer, that ridiculous watch he always flashed, microphone in hand. He launched into his bit, the same cadence, same little pauses that he thought made him charming. He singled out a junior associate for a harmless roast. The crowd laughed. The junior smiled nervously. And then, as if on cue, Whitaker turned his grin in my direction. In the quiet beat between jokes, I stood up. I didn't storm the stage. I didn't shout. I walked with the precise calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his head. I made my way through conversations and clinking glasses, and when people noticed, they leaned in. Curiosity is a quiet amplifier. It pulls a room toward truth the way a magnet pulls iron filings. Whitaker's eyes flicked to me. For a second, there was amusement, like a man who thought someone might finally give him something to work with. He gestured with his chin in that patronizing way, as if to say, go on then. I let him think he was in control. I tapped the microphone at the podium like a conductor taking the cue, and I said, very simply, if we're celebrating tonight for honesty and transparency, then I have a short presentation I'd like to share. There was a ripple of polite laughter, the kind that says, oh, Darius is about to be cute. Whitaker smiled wider. That smile was a mistake. I signaled Marco. I'd promised him a cue phrase, something that would feel incidental to him so he wouldn't second-guess the request, and Marco's nod was nearly invisible. The AV tech hit play. The screen behind Whitaker, the same screen he'd used earlier to flash memes and nicknames, switched. The warm yellow lights that had been flattering his suit suddenly illuminated a white slide with bold black text. Expense ledger, company card, Whitaker. You could hear a fork drop. Slide 1. A clean table. Date, vendor amount, approval stamp. Nothing sensational, just facts. The room hummed with that slow, spreading awareness that happens when numbers begin to tell a story. I kept my voice steady. These are company charges attributed to Mr. Whitaker's corporate card over the past 12 months. No flourish, no accusation, just a line that forced people to read. Then came the second slide. Hotels on weekends, restaurant names that didn't correspond with client dinners, entries labeled personal entertainment with amounts that made people glance at one another. I didn't shout to make the connections. I let the receipts do the work, and then I played the clip. It was a short audio, 2 sentences. Whitaker's voice candid, casual, saying, put it on the card. She'll never know the sound hit the rooftop like a cold rain. Conversation died. For a fraction of a second, Whitaker tried to mark it as awkward humor, but the clip was clean, contextual, and the receipts aligned. The room had moved from polite to stunned in the space of one slide. I watched his face not with hatred, but with an odd, clinical curiosity. The man who'd once enjoyed making me small now had to watch his own words become the instrument of his exposure. He lunged to the microphone, voice high with forced indignation. That's that's out of context, he stammered, red flushing his cheeks. A woman near the front, an account manager named Leah I'd confided in, called out, quietly but firmly, if it's out of context, explain it. Right now, the silence that followed was a kind of pressure. Whitaker tried to bluff. He shuffled notes. He pointed fingers back at me. The classic attack. Impugn the messenger. But that no longer worked. The spreadsheet had done the slow, patient truth-telling. People were reading the slides. The dates matched travel calendars. The vendors matched nights when no clients were in town. A pattern is a stubborn thing. It keeps repeating until it becomes a fact hard to ignore. Then, the personal layer unfolded. I had one more slide, the one I'd hesitated to include because it cut deeper than expense fraud. It was a screenshot of a message thread, not salacious but clear. Plans to meet, logistics coordinated with company events. The implication that Whitaker had leveraged his role for private rendezvous. The room felt smaller. Someone's phone clicked record on instinct. His wife, who'd been sitting front and center because Whitaker liked to make the party look like family, stood up like she'd been suddenly electrified. Her face wilted from shock to humiliation in a matter of seconds. She didn't leave quietly, though. She left with purpose, heels clicking on hardwood, and that walk echoed more painfully than any joke. Whitaker's face turned to stone. He tried to dismiss it as a misunderstanding. This is manipulation, he spat. This is a setup. No, I said, almost whispering. No. It's documentation, I let the word land. People started talking, low at first, then louder. Finance pulled out laptops and scrolled. HR looked at me and then at Leah with a new serious attention. A few attendees who had been filming earlier for Instagram realized they had content far grosser than they'd intended, and the feeds started moving. Whitaker snapped. He yelled, attempted to grab the laptop, tried to pull the USB myself, but Marco, who had rehearsed one small thing I'd asked, cut the feed, not theatrically. He hit pause with a professional calm. Security, alerted by the commotion, moved to flank the stage. The meltdown was cinematic, not because I wanted it to be, but because the truth in a public room behaves that way. He tried every line in the book. Emotional denial, accusation, charm. None of it stuck. His assistant, who had often covered his tracks, looked like someone who'd watched a house of cards start to fall and now had to decide whether to hold it up or let it collapse. Someone recorded his apology to a camera. Someone else recorded his denial. Within the hour, snippets made their way to Slack channels, private messages, and the gossipy group chat that everyone pretended not to check. The footage multiplied like a stain. I didn't dance on his ruin. I didn't jump up and down. I sat back down and watched the room do what rooms do when their myth gets punctured. They lean in, they gossip, they reckon. By the time I left the rooftop that night, the band had finished its set, and the party had thinned into small clumps of people with stunned faces. Whitaker's wife had not returned. His assistant had gone quiet. HR emailed me to ask for a meeting the next morning. As I walked back to the subway, the cold air hit my face and I felt remarkably light. The optimal revenge isn't about catharsis alone. It's about correction. Tonight wasn't about humiliating a man for cruelty's sake. It was about making visible what had been invisible. About letting the people who had laughed or looked away see the same facts I'd seen. The reveal was public, damning, and irreversible. But the night's echoes were only the start. Would HR act with speed and fairness, or would corporate risk aversion and PR spin turn this into a negotiated settlement that let Whitaker survive? The Monday morning after the party felt like stepping into a different office entirely. The same glass doors, the same hum of elevators, the same smell of burnt coffee drifting from the break room. But the air was different, heavy, expectant, like the quiet in a theater before the curtain rises. People didn't make small talk. They whispered. They huddled in corners, phones tilted toward each other, replaying shaky videos from Friday night. Whitaker's voice. His face, the expense reports. The moment his wife stormed out. These weren't rumors anymore. They were receipts. Receipts that had been projected 30 feet high, above twinkling holiday lights, while the entire company watched. Every time I walked past a group, the conversations cut off, replaced by darting glances. Not hostile, not mocking. Something else. Respect, maybe, or relief that finally someone had exposed the man who'd made so many of us miserable. By 9 a.m., HR had summoned me. The email was formal. Please report to conference room B at 9 sharp regarding Friday's incident. Incident. That word always does heavy lifting. When I walked in, 3 people were already seated. Karen from HR, who always dressed like a funeral director, the CFO, stern and silent, and the head of legal, flipping through a folder so thick it looked like a case file. They didn't start with small talk. Karen folded her hands and leaned forward. Darius, we need to understand exactly what happened at the holiday event. From your perspective, my perspective. They said it like it was just an angle, like the truth might be optional. I took a breath. I told them everything. Calmly, factually, no flourish. I explained the expense reports, the way Whitaker had been filing questionable charges for over a year. I described the pattern. Weekend hotel stays, extravagant dinners without clients present. I admitted I had compiled the evidence. Yes, I'd presented it at the party. No, I hadn't fabricated a single number. The audio clip? Pulled from a Teams call that had been accidentally recorded. Company property. Legal's eyes flickered at that part. They knew I just covered myself. This wasn't whistleblowing in the shadows. This was corporate documentation, weaponized in public. Karen scribbled notes like her pen might snap. Why didn't you come to HR sooner? She asked. I almost laughed. Sooner. The same HR that had ignored complaints for years about Whitaker's party games. The same HR that looked away when he made comments that weren't jokes but power moves. Instead, I chose my words carefully. I did what I thought would make people actually listen. And judging by Friday night, they listened. The CFO finally spoke, his voice gravelly, low. Do you realize the liability you've created for this company? I met his eyes. No, Whitaker created that liability. I just exposed it before a client did silence. Then, slowly, the head of legal nodded. A small nod, but enough to say, he's not wrong. By noon, the news had trickled down officially. HR sent a company-wide email. Effective immediately, Mr. Whitaker has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. No mention of fraud. No mention of Friday. Just a sterile corporate line, but everyone knew. The office was buzzing louder than the holiday party itself. People stopped me in the hallway with half smiles. Those coded little acknowledgments. Good morning, Darius. Or, interesting weekend, huh? No one said it outright, but the message was clear. You did what we all wished someone would do. Not everyone was pleased, though. Whitaker's loyalists, the ones who'd benefited from his favoritism, shot daggers at me in meetings. One even muttered, "You just ended your career, man." Maybe he thought so, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew careers don't end when you expose rot. They end when you enable it. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the looks, the whispers, the HR questions, and I realized something. Friday was only the opening act. Whitaker wasn't gone yet. He was suspended, which meant the investigation had just begun, which meant he still had allies, which meant there was still a chance, however slim, that the company would try to bury this, sweep it under the rug, and spin it into something forgettable. That thought lit a fresh fire in me. Because if they tried, I had more. Emails, chat logs, even a client complaint that Whitaker had buried last quarter. If HR thought Friday night was the full story, they hadn't seen the rest of the fate. The room believed the story was over because Whitaker was suspended. But I knew better. The real test was whether the company would protect him to save face, or finish what had been started. And if they chose the first, well, I was ready to detonate part 2. The investigation began quietly, but in an office like ours, nothing stayed quiet for long. You could feel the pulse of it everywhere. Hushed conversations in break rooms, meetings that ended the moment someone walked in, and an eerie sense that every keystroke, every email, was being scrutinized. HR scheduled interviews. They called in assistants, finance staff, even junior analysts who barely interacted with Whitaker. Everyone was asked the same questions. Did you notice anything unusual about his expenses? Did you ever feel pressured to cover for him? Did you ever hear inappropriate comments at office events? I watched it unfold like a chess match, and I wasn't just sitting back. I was moving pieces too. Whitaker wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. Even while on administrative leave, he started reaching out to people. Some got phone calls late at night. Others received cryptic texts. Remember who gave you your start here? One afternoon, I caught wind of him trying to flip the narrative. A friend in accounting forwarded me a voicemail Whitaker had left for her. His voice was dripping with venom. This is all a setup. Darius is bitter, jealous. He fabricated those numbers. You know me. You know I'd never do this. That was his angle. Make me look like the vindictive employee, the one who wanted revenge. If enough people bought it, maybe he could twist the story back in his favor. But what he didn't know was that I had kept the real evidence locked away for this exact moment. 2 weeks into the investigation, HR discovered something damning. A reimbursement Whitaker had filed for client entertainment in Vegas. Except there was no client, just him, 2 colleagues, and a receipt from a nightclub that looked more like a hangover diary than a business expense. The company was forced to confront reality, and this wasn't a one-off mistake. It was a pattern. Still, there was hesitation. Whitaker had been with the firm for over a decade. He'd brought in big clients. Executives didn't want to admit they'd let him get away with this for years. And that's when I knew it was time for my final move. One night, I sent an anonymous package to HR Legal and, most importantly, the board of directors. Inside a flash drive. On it, not just the Vegas receipts, but a timeline of over 40 questionable reimbursements. Hotel bookings under fake client names, airline tickets charged twice. And the kicker? A client email where Whitaker begged them not to escalate a complaint about inappropriate remarks he'd made during a dinner meeting. The flash drive landed like a bomb. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face when she called me back in. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. Darius, she said, voice tight, what you've provided, this changes everything. Word spread quickly. The board had called an emergency meeting. Whitaker tried one last stand, sent a rambling all-staff email about loyalty and betrayal that only made him look more desperate. People screenshotted it, laughing as they passed it around. And then the news dropped. Whitaker was terminated effective immediately with cause. No severance, no farewell. Just a locked-out badge and security escorting him out of the building. The office exploded, some in shock, others in relief. Years of intimidation gone in one stroke. But here's the part that made it poetic. The company didn't just fire him. They also referred his expense fraud to federal investigators. That meant fines. That meant legal trouble. That meant his career in finance was effectively over. And I didn't have to lift another finger. I'd set the trap at the holiday party, and now the weight of his own arrogance crushed him. Whitaker was out. His career was crumbling. But what would happen to me? Would I be hailed as the office hero, or quietly marked as the guy who made the company bleed? When the email about Whitaker's termination hit everyone's inboxes, the atmosphere in the office shifted instantly. Some people gasped out loud. Others whispered in hallways. A few even clapped quietly at their desks. It was surreal, like watching a dictator topple overnight. At first, I thought it would feel like victory. But the reality, it was much messier. Some colleagues were openly supportive. A few stopped by my desk, giving me a look that said, "We know you had something to do with this." One whispered, "About time someone stood up to him." Those small moments made me feel vindicated, like maybe all those humiliations I endured were finally balanced out. But others weren't so kind. There was this undercurrent of unease. People started treating me differently, like I was radioactive. Suddenly, conversations stopped when I entered a room. Lunch invitations that had once been casual and easy dried up. It wasn't that they liked Whitaker. Far from it. It was that I had proven I was capable of something most people fear. Exposing the rot at the top. And that made me dangerous. The executives didn't say much to me either. Officially, Whitaker's termination was chalked up to policy violations. No mention of the harassment, no acknowledgement of the party, no thank you for bringing evidence forward. One VP cornered me in the break room a week later, giving me a tight smile. You've made a lot of waves, Darius. Careful. People don't forget things like this. It wasn't a warning, it was a threat. A reminder that in the corporate world, justice has a cost. It didn't take long for rumors to spread. Some claimed I'd been plotting Whitaker's downfall for years. Others said I'd fabricated the whole thing just to get ahead. One particularly venomous version painted me as obsessed with revenge because Whitaker embarrassed me at the party. And while none of it was true, perception often matters more than reality. The same colleagues who once pitied me now looked at me with suspicion. I'd gotten rid of Whitaker, but in doing so, I had revealed myself as someone willing to fight back, and that terrified them. But here's where the story pivots. While most people kept their distance, a handful of colleagues quietly aligned with me. They saw what I had done not as a betrayal of the company, but as proof that corruption could be challenged. They started sending me leads, whispering about shady practices in other departments, even suggesting I move up, that I take Whitaker's place. I realized something important. Yes, some saw me as a threat, but others saw me as a leader. My revenge had succeeded. Whitaker was gone, disgraced, maybe even ruined forever. But now I had a choice: fade back into the shadows, or step into the spotlight his downfall had created. Whitaker was gone. His office emptied, his nameplate ripped from the door. The man who once loomed over my every workday, barking insults and smirking through my humiliation, was just erased. And yet, victory didn't feel clean. I'd walk past his old office and still feel his presence, like a phantom sneer. The silence that replaced his booming voice was unsettling, almost too quiet, like the eye of a storm. Sometimes I wondered if he was at home, plotting a comeback, seething at the thought that someone like me had outmaneuvered him. Part of me wanted him to be thinking about me every single day, wanted him to wake up with rage and regret, wanted him to choke on the memory of how I had turned the tables. That was the revenge talking, the part of me that still wanted blood. But another part of me was just tired of carrying the weight of his cruelty, tired of proving myself in battles I never asked for. Weeks later, HR called me in. The meeting was clinical, full of corporate doublespeak. We recognize the value of your commitment. You've demonstrated initiative and integrity in challenging circumstances. Then came the offer. They wanted me to step into an interim managerial role, Whitaker's role. It was poetic, almost cinematic. The kid who had been mocked at the holiday party was now being asked to take the throne of the man who humiliated him. But I had to stop and ask myself, was this what I wanted, or was this just another trap, another cage, only gilded this time? I turned it down, not because I wasn't capable and not because I didn't deserve it, but because stepping into Whitaker's shoes meant becoming part of the very machine that allowed him to thrive for so long. And I refused to be defined by him, even in his absence. Instead, I chose something different. I quietly started applying to other companies, places where I wasn't the guy who took down Whitaker, places where I could be just Darius Cole, a man with skills, with ambition, with dignity intact. When the day came, I handed in my resignation. The looks I got ranged from shock to relief to envy. Some whispered, "Smart move." Others muttered, "Running away," but I knew better. My revenge wasn't just in toppling Whitaker. It wasn't in watching him escorted out with his box of belongings or in the whispers that followed him long after he left. My real victory was in reclaiming my freedom, in proving to myself that I wasn't powerless, that even in a system stacked against me, I could fight back and win, and most importantly, in walking away on my own terms. As I left the building for the last time, I didn't look back. Not at Whitaker's empty office, not at the coworkers who weren't sure what to make of me. The sun hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt light. Revenge had given me justice, but closure, that came from choosing myself.
Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, go watch the one on the left and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more tales of triumph over injustice and a saga of ultimate revenge.